Hey, good evening, everybody. Hey, Georgina, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, just about.
Hello, Stuart here.
Stuart,
Hi,
hello.
Stuart.
Hi, Gareth.
Welcome
Georgina.
aboard.
Thank you very much. It's been a long time, but
Hey,
yeah, really good to be here. Thank you for having me.
yeah, no problem at all. We've got loads of people joining us tonight by the look of it.
Oh, excellent.
I think everyone's suffering from
Yay!
cabin fever, so everyone's
Yeah.
kind of dialing in today. How's everyone doing?
I'm not suffering from cabin fever. I am fucking loving this retreat time, doing my own things to my own agenda without having to see anybody. It's bloody brilliant.
I think it's a time designed for introverts, isn't it? That's great. Hey, Anne. Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah. So everyone's still alive. That's a good start, at least.
I think some people are having getting to the end of their tether, shall we say?
Yep.
But yeah, some other people are used to this type of thing, so yeah, mixture.
It's going to be interesting. Is the announcement at 7 o'clock this evening about the current lockdown measures? Yeah. So that could go, I guess, one of three ways. It's a bit like Bitcoin price, really. It could go up, down, or sideways. I do get the feeling it'll either be, oh, we're going to carry on as we are, or it's going to get more stringent because we're not doing what we need to be doing, or we're going to do a gradual phased release, or Scotland's going to go its own way and Wales is going to go its own way. So, Georgina, you might be the guinea pig for us. They might change it, and if we suddenly discover that when we phone Aberystwyth or somewhere there's no answer, then we know we need to lock down again. So, is everyone keeping an eye on the crypto market at the moment?
Oh yes.
Yeah. It's all getting very exciting. Less than 24 hours to go before block. I forgot what number it is now. Whatever. The block reward changes about 24 hours. So it's been interesting seeing all the comments from all the experts about what it's going to do to the price and whether the halving is built into the price or whether it isn't, and that kind of thing. So it's definitely going to do one of three things. So it's either going to go up, down, or sideways. Has anyone got any strong thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, we've said it 7 times over, Gary. You know, the thing so much with crypto is, you've got all these experts, and what happens is something completely different to what they're saying, or one of them's always right, but it's just almost impossible to ever guess. I mean, that's what I've definitely found over the last sort of 3-4 years. I have no idea.
Halving or not, what are your thoughts about? It might do absolutely nothing. It might, because it's so closely tied with the S&P 500. It might just fall flat and nothing changes. It just carries on.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's where it's been interesting. We were chatting about that. I think Ant and I possibly a week or so ago about how it is you've got this weird situation in the world right now, where companies are furloughing, companies are announcing that they're closing, millions of redundancies, property prices collapsing, but the share market is going up in some ways, which is kind of weird. Then you've got the oil price, where oil has absolutely collapsed to the point where refiners are paying people to take delivery rather than trying to keep it. So you got a negative oil price. That's crazy. And then you look at crypto, where until now everyone has said, "Oh well, crypto's the new safe haven. It's the new gold. It's the place to go to when there's risk and uncertainty." And exactly the opposite happened. And trying to think when it was in March the 16th maybe, when Bitcoin in particular just tanked.
It's the 12th, I think.
Was it
Gary.
12? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just about recovered back now, hasn't it? I haven't looked at the numbers today, but I think it got back to where it was a few days ago.
Yeah, it has. So it's taken a tumble overnight.
Right.
I was actually up last night, and about 1:30 in the morning, it took a massive tumble, almost down to 8,000. Well, no, actually probably touched about 8,100, but then wicked back up to about where we are now, about 8,600. A bit of a dump. So this is the time to maybe buy the dip. But then again, we've got the halving Some people pronounce it halvening. I pronounce it halving because halving is the actual word Stoshi used in his white paper. So I'm going to try and continue to use the word halving. So it looks as if that is coming up in 1 day and 7 hours time. On block height 630,000. We're currently at block 629,809, so that's 191 blocks to go. But it
can't be more than 24 hours then.
No, it's not. I think it's more than 24 hours.
No, it can't be, because you have a new block every 10 minutes, which means you have 240 blocks. I did do the maths on this at some point, but if you get a new block every 10 minutes, then that's 60 blocks an hour. So yeah, anyway. Yeah.
But that's what it's got on CoinMarketCap, and there's also Bitcoin block reward, bitcoinblockhalf.com. So that's showing 1 day, 7 hours and 35 minutes. But we are seeing quite a lot of hash rate increase. So maybe the blocks will actually come in far quicker.
They can't, because it doesn't matter what the hash rate is. A new block is created every 10 minutes.
Well, not necessarily, because sometimes we do see blocks that are actually faster than 10 minutes. 10 minutes is the average time.
Yep.
And when we see the hash rate go up, we tend to see blocks being created just, sub 10 minutes. And then you've got the difficulty adjustment that comes 2 weeks later, if that's constant, to bring it back up to around 10 minutes.
Yep.
But it's just an average.
I have seen, you mentioned the hash rate going up. I have seen a lot of sort of amateur miners in the States dumping their sort of now or soon to be inefficient, not cost effective hardware. The Antminer S9s and things are hitting eBay for $100 now because they're not worth the, 12, 15, terahash is not going to cut it anymore. And the S19 now is doing 110 terahash. So there are, I think it's $2,500–3,000 what an S9 used to cost. So I think the hardware's caught up. So in terms of the miners, I think the hardware's out there for them to still make a profit, still pay the energy bills, and still make coin even after the halving. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think some miners are going to kind of hold on to their Bitcoin, because we all know that after the halving, even if we do take a dump, it will actually start moving up because of the supply demand curve. And so a lot of miners do tend to keep it. Yes, there will be a lot of unprofitable machines out there. But I think that will kind of balance out within 2 weeks with that difficulty adjustment. We may see kind of slightly longer blocks, well into 15, maybe even to 20 minutes for the first kind of day or two after the halving.
It's going to be interesting, and you've got some experience in mining as well, haven't you?
Yes.
Coming back to Stuart's point, is there not the possibility that some people will take their Antminer S9s, which aren't economically viable for producing Bitcoin, and switch them to mine Ethereum or something instead?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, there's a possibility of that, especially if it does depend on the price and if they're running the same type of hashing algorithm. So Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash and BSV can all be switched from Bitcoin. But the thing is, because they've already had their halving and prices haven't really recovered, it's just there might be a slight changeover straight after mining Bitcoin, because the block times will increase slightly, and so therefore you're not going to find those 6.25 Bitcoins every block as quick. So there might be some miners that then move on to Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, and Litecoin. But I would have thought that they would move back pretty much. It's been pretty crazy that the hash rate on Bitcoin Cash kind of went from something like 1.5% of Bitcoin's hash rate down to 0.3% of Bitcoin's hash rate. I mean, it's ridiculous, the amount that Bitcoin has relative to all of the others, but particularly Bitcoin Cash.
In terms of being profitable, what's the I mean, are people still doing it on a domestic level, or is it these huge, massive kind of banks of computers still like?
It's not. Yeah, it's not profitable to do it as a consumer unless you've got solar power. So I have a simple machine upstairs that just has a GPU, CPU, mining. It's something like 40 cents a day that I get. I mean, it's a piddling amount. And when I first kind of used it a couple of years ago, I think there's about £1, maybe about $1 that I was making a day. So it's really kind of fallen because the price has fallen. Once the price picks up, if it picks up more than the hash rate, then you can mine more profitably. But I've got free power here when the sun shines.
But you may, like you say, you may have people who hang on to their older, now uneconomical hardware, but they look at it a different way. They say, well, it's costing me $1 a day, in power to run this rig. However, in the future, speculatively, coin may be worth a whole ton more. So I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to make a loss short term, but look medium and longer term.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point as well. If you think about at the moment, I'm not mining Bitcoin and I'm not mining Ethereum. If I want to get hold of Ethereum, I could buy it and I could pay whatever the rate is, $200 or whatever. Or if I did have a mining rig and it was costing me 40 cents per whatever, that could still be a lot cheaper than actually buying it on an exchange. So yeah, it's a good point. We shall see. So you're interested in crypto? Do you do mining then, or do you have an interest in mining?
No, I was just looking at one of my accounts. I was wondered when I got into it. 2015, I bought my first Bitcoin, and I look at the price I paid now, and I think, oh god. I did a little mining around the end of 2015, 2016, but nothing serious. I didn't follow it up. But no, I always kept half an eye on it, and it is very interesting. I work for television, so one of our yearly duties used to be to go to Davos for the WEF, and it was just very interesting sitting on the set listening to CEO after business leader after world leader come on and be asked questions about crypto, and you had just polarizing opinions from Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan saying this is poison. If my traders get caught with this, they're gone. And you get other people.
His company was actually buying it at the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they had a trading desk in Scandinavia, didn't they? That was doing quite nicely.
Was that where it was? So it's been very interesting. I've kind of tried to keep my finger on the pulse of it all, but it's there's so much going on. I thought it'd be interesting to hear your take on it.
Yeah, well, JP Morgan's probably a really good example, actually, of don't listen to what firms are saying, look at what firms are doing. So you're absolutely right. JP Morgan originally came out, Jamie Dimon originally came out with a comment of, oh, crypto is snake oil, it's awful, blockchain's dreadful, blah, blah, blah. Then a few weeks later, he partly retracted and said, well, actually, blockchain's pretty good. But crypto, no, it's awful. And as you say, if I ever hear any of my traders are doing this, they'll be sacked. Then it was discovered that they had a desk in Scandinavia that was doing a load of stuff on the crypto side of things and was doing quite well. And they kept pretty quiet on there. Then it was announced that they were implementing their own JP Morgan coin, so JPM, which is their own crypto token, which they've launched to use internally for like intercompany settlement, I think it is in there. And then you look, they're also an investor in several blockchain protocols. They were certainly involved in R3 and Corda. They were involved in Ripple.
Quorum?
Yeah, Quorum, sorry. Yeah, Quorum, in fact, was pretty much known as their own blockchain protocol. So that
they sold that to Consensus.
Yeah, so they've been doing loads of stuff on this. And now JP Morgan is one of the first firms, along with, I've forgotten who the other big investment firm is. It's not BlackRock, but it's some of that kind of side.
BlackRock.
Well, is it BlackRock? They're now offering a Bitcoin derivative or a crypto derivative, because it was funny. I was at a financial services conference a few months ago in Birmingham, and it was JP Morgan, and it was Fidelity Mutual was the other company, and they were next to each other, their trade stands. And I said how that was really interesting that the two big companies who are moving into the crypto space were physically next to each other in this massive, it was at the International Conference Centre in Brum, and they're actually next to each other. And saying, yeah, and the JP Morgan, they've now implemented also, they're using a crypto token to pay their staff internally on things like reward schemes and that. So that they've got like a loyalty scheme internally. And I think they're using either JPM coin or something similar to do that. So yeah, but don't believe what they say, believe what they do. Yeah.
Well, they've gone even further. You know, there's a lot of stories about JP Morgan and some of the issues that they've had over the years. I don't want to speculate too much, but I hear that they're also now looking at zero knowledge proofs and Zcash for anonymous transactions. So they are pretty advanced in understanding crypto, no matter what Jamie Dimon says.
Yeah.
And I do wonder whether they're going to be using privacy and anonymity in the digital world, just like they've done in the traditional financial world with some of their cover-ups and some of, you know, the regulation that's come their way. Yeah. So I'm a bit worried they're going to start using the tech in nefarious ways.
Well, it doesn't get much more private than using used dollar bills in suitcases to pay for transactions, which you know, companies of that nature, not necessarily them, have certainly done. And there are enough examples each year, not just JP Morgan, but all the big banks and that, paying regulatory fines for being in breach of all sorts of limits, whether it's sanctions checks or custodial services or not doing due diligence, KYC or whatever. HSBC, I think it's like 1 in 10 of their staff now work for the compliance department, which effectively means that 1 in 10 of HSBC staff.
You're breaking up a bit, Gary.
It's the NSA.
Yeah, choose the security agency of your choice. Yeah, but HSBC, like 10% of their staff are involved in compliance, which means 1 in 10 HSBC staff is looking at what the other 9 are doing. So,
oh yeah, compliance is a huge cost center for so many banks, and yeah, the way they're going to come through this is questionable. But going back to, you know, buying crypto or kind of understanding crypto, I have heard a lot more people kind of consider, you know, a bank of Bitcoin. You know, you use it as a savings account. Yeah, you know, it fluctuates wildly. We know that. And we know that we're still trying to price what the value of a Bitcoin is in this world. But a lot of more people are kind of using it as a savings account because, you know, if it goes the same way as other economic crashes in other countries where they start taking the money from your pension, or kind of, you know, the bail-ins in Cyprus in 2013, you know, you've got to have your own money and you've got to control your own finances. And so if you think of it as just a savings account, which does fluctuate, but over time, you know, it will get, I guess, larger and larger, we hope. That's how a lot of people are looking at it.
You're absolutely right, though, Anthony, about the Cyprus issue, because, you know, I mean, they were literally just dipping into people's bank accounts, weren't they? You know, and there's no reason why that's not going to happen anywhere else in the world.
Well, it's a good point. I gave a few talks in the last year or so to various Russian family wealth officers. And if the thought of a Russian family wealth officer makes you think of McMafia, in terms of what on earth is a Russian family wealth officer, then, you know, these are people who are dealing with ultra high net worth individuals who like to keep their money. And I was saying to them, the 2 things that made their ears prick up. The first was when you looked at the return on investment, that irrespective of when you bought into crypto, you're still doing quite well. And I was commenting at the time how I think I was making roughly about 1% per day in terms of interest. So it was a phase that was going up very nicely. And they were saying, oh, that's interesting, we're happy making 1% per year. But more importantly, it was the fact that crypto is the one form of asset that cannot be confiscated. Whereas, you know, as you say, if you've got a bank account, like as Cyprus discovered the hard way, if the government says, well, we're slicing 10% of your bank account, then they can do it overnight. And when I said to these Russian officers, well, you're looking after your client's funds, how much of it is invested in a way that it cannot be sequestered or frozen or sliced or whatever? They said, well, we have ways, you know, we can do things with gold and that kind of thing. It's like, well, that can still be confiscated. So, yeah, we're in interesting times, definitely. How's my speaker sound?
First unconfiscatable asset.
Yeah. And that I think is actually the thing where, having been in this space for several years, where you get some people who say, oh, crypto is it's a new way of paying for things without an intermediary. Others say, well, crypto is it's a new form of gold, it's an investment. So you've got it as like either an exchange of value or a store of value. Being an unconfiscatable asset, I actually think is the feature that no one talks about that may actually be one of the greatest benefits. So we'll see. And then you add on things like programmability. And this is where having a conversation the other week with both the UK government and the Bank of England about having programmable money suddenly gets very interesting indeed, where if the Bank of England, instead of raising pound notes, created smart pounds, which are configurable and are changeable and can automatically deduct tax at the point at which they're spent, that's quite a game changer. I'm conscious everyone else is being quiet.
But taxing at the point that it's spent, if let's say you're in country A, but you're using country B currency for country C to purchase their goods, you know, which country takes a tax? Because it's going to be an instantaneous payment.
Yeah. But this is the thing, that if it's written into a smart contract, then as long as it is a country, then that's it. This is part of the problem where people complain about offshore accounts and intercompany transfers and all this kind of thing, that I don't think people are necessarily bothered about whether it's the UK that gets the money or Luxembourg gets the money. They're worried about the fact that neither seems to be getting the money. So you know, a smart contract where you pay a tax at the point of payment for consumption could be quite an interesting one. Everyone's gone silent. Does that mean I'm on mute?
No.
No, you were a little warbly at the end, but I got the gist of it. It's interesting. But then you could also say a smart pound could only be a certain smart pound could only be spent in a certain place, which would be interesting as well. You know,
well, they're definitely going to have that type of control over it, aren't they? You know, you're not going to be able to send £2,000 to an Afghanistan charity. So you are going to be restricted in what you can do with it. It is not going to be private, so it's all going to be monitored. And how on earth are you going to spread a digital currency and make it become the new world currency without having it out there and talking to the platforms we already have for cryptocurrency? Yeah, and then once you then think, right, if it's actually going to be traded on these exchanges, then you're going to have plenty more people being exposed to Bitcoin.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, going back to Stuart's point briefly about the limitation on payment. So there was a project in 2016 up in Manchester, or just outside of Manchester, which is called GovCoin, and it was a way that they were paying benefits claimants using crypto. And it was a government-developed crypto that they're piloting. The idea was, if you were receiving payments for your benefits, for like housing benefit or something, it would be paid in a cryptocurrency that could only be spent with certain organizations, like housing associations, and it could only be spent at a certain time within a certain number of days. So it completely removed this ability for you to get your housing benefit and go down to the off license and buy a load of lager or whatever. So as a concept, I always found that very interesting, because you usually find, I used to do a lot of talks on this, and the room would always be split into whether this was a good thing or bad. And typically, if you're a taxpayer, you'd say it's good, because you say, well, my taxes are going to benefits agents and I want it to be spent appropriately. If you're more of a libertarian who believes in freedom of choice and that kind of thing, then you say it's bad. And that was exactly what happened one day in Parliament when I think it came up on the BBC News the day that I was presenting this to a big law firm conference, and Parliament debated it, and it went exactly down that route. That the Conservatives were saying, "Oh, this is great, we can control how benefits are paid, we can reduce fraud, we can reduce misspending, that kind of thing." And the Labour Party was saying, "Completely control your citizens, that's just wrong." So from a political basis, they killed that project at the time. But I'm just seeing it kind of all going back again right now, particularly with the coronavirus, where you've suddenly got the possibility that everyone's being encouraged to have a digital identity, whether it's on their mobile phone or a place or something like that, to track and trace.
You're breaking up again, Gary, by the way.
Sorry?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
that's
you
interesting.
unfortunately broken up for pretty much all of that right until the end, I'm afraid, Gary.
And that was where
we
I
got the
said,
gist.
and this
No,
is
we
what
got the
you
gist.
and this is what you should buy. I'll try these again then. Carry on talking.
Anyone else have any
I
ideas?
was just offering some.
I think that whatever happens, that the governments are going to try to come up with these schemes. When you look at the culture of the dark net and anything that's not even as far as the dark net, there's going to be the rebels in the world that are going to create their own systems anyway. So as much as it may be, they may make some very good attempts at actually trying to be very directive in how money is controlled and how people behave, but ultimately I don't think it's going to work. Where it's likely to work is where there's a culture like in China, where they see the government as it's not just an authoritarian, but they do. It's like if you talk to people on the ground there, if you talk to people in that society, they're horrified. The fact that we're horrified that we see it as a very domineering culture, they see it as being protective, and it's a system that works, and they're just actually being a part of a group collective. And yeah, I think that they stand a chance of being able to be very much more controlling, but ultimately the majority of the population, I think they're going to say, "Stop that! We're making our own way. We're going to self-police, self-regulate, and support each other and be a part of a global community instead of being victims of whatever policy is being dictated by somebody that a group of people who don't necessarily have an understanding of what happens on the ground level."
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The West does not necessarily understand the mindset of the East, and certainly in terms of the conversations I've had with people from Beijing and Shanghai, where you talk about how the Chinese governments, they've got all like their SRI project, so their social ranking index. They've got facial recognition software. They've got more and more controls out over what their citizens do and how they can do it and who with. But you speak to Chinese people and they go, well, that's fine because the government looks after us. And what kind of acted as a wake-up call to me was when I was speaking to someone when I was out in Hong Kong, and they said, well, the reason that some of the mainland Chinese people like it that way is because they don't have to make any decisions for themselves. They don't have to worry about where am I going to find somewhere to live, where am I going to find a job, what do I need to do to work, all this kind of thing, because it's all decided for them. And that takes that responsibility away. And they find that bizarrely enough, liberating. The lack of personal control is liberating, and so some of them are quite into it because it removes the responsibility from them. They just do as the state says, and the state looks after them. Now you compare that to the West, where that's absolutely anathema. Of what do you mean the state determines what I'm doing? I want freedom of thought and independence and that. And you can see why there's just a conflict between the two cultures. Did people
I heard that the Chinese kind of didn't understand the word privacy. It hasn't been in their lexicon or their culture So, intellectual property, we know that their culture copies a lot, and they believe it's the best form of flattery, rather than locking it all up in legalese. But yeah, it's a different culture, and I think we'll eventually find, probably eventually we'll have two sides of the world. Maybe the communistic coin that is controlled for the Far East, and hopefully Bitcoin for the rest of the world, or at least something that can't be controlled.
Renminbi coin or yuan
Yeah.
coin. Yeah.
DCEP, I think they're calling it. Digital DCEP.
Okay.
Digital cash, something or other. Yeah.
We'll wait and see. See what comes up. Okay, given that I'm having a few techie glitches tonight, which is very unusual, I suspect actually it's because the rest of the family's discovered that there's this thing called the internet. And so they're now beginning to play Roblox, Minecraft, and all sorts of things on it. We normally only run these sessions for 30 minutes anyway, so I was going to wrap this up for now, and it means we can all go away and see how many more blocks there are to be mined. But unless anyone's got any immediate pressing questions or comments or anything.
But no, I was going to say the same thing. The kids have just got out the bath, so I'm about to be inundated with screaming demands for drinks.
Yeah.
But no, from me, thank you very much.
I thought they were like 19 and 20 now.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
1 and 2.5. So from me, thank you very much. Very interesting. Nice to meet everybody. I hope to join you again next week for the aftermath.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get Stuart to come for the last year, so I was so pleased when he could.
Yeah. So the quick closing question for everybody: Bitcoin halving tomorrow. Do we think the price is going to go up, down, or sideways? And we'll go with you, Stuart, first.
Sideways.
Sideways. Georgina?
Bounce. I think it's going to go all ways.
Go on, Ant.
I think it's gonna have a slight dip. As you get selling into the buying, and it'll have a slight dip, but then it will recover relatively quickly.
And James, what do you think?
I think I'm going to be slightly different. I think it's going to go up, but only very, very slightly.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been watching it. My thinking is that every other halving has resulted in the price going up, so therefore it won't do this time. It'll do something a little bit different. So we'll see. Anyway, have a great week.
Bitcoin will be Bitcoin.
Yeah. Have a good week, everyone. Thanks for joining us. See you again next week.
Thank you very much.
And go and wash your hands.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.